Hey, good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday morning to you, and welcome back to Morning Musings. Hey, don't forget to order your copy of Maranatha, brand spanking new book by Holger Neubauer. Go to my website, donkpreston.com, bibleprophecy.com. It's an examination of that rather enigmatic word, Maranatha, found in 1 Corinthians chapter 16 and verse 22. O Lord, come. Some render it, the Lord has come, the Lord will come, etc. But he points out that the term is taken from Malachi chapter 3, 1 and 2. The Lord whom you seek will come suddenly to his temple. And the significance of that is that that passage is a prophecy of the impending, or the coming, I should say, of the judgment on Jerusalem and Judea in AD 70. As witnessed by the fact that John the Baptizer was the messenger to proclaim that coming judgment, and John said it was near. John was the messenger. John said that judgment was near. The judgment of Maranatha. Very, very good book. Very special price being offered through the month of April. All right? Hey, hope you're safe. Hope you're staying safe from Corona. Follow the rules. Stay humble before the Lord. Offer up prayers daily. Do not let your heart be troubled. All right. Well, we have been studying over the last several weeks the issue of the sounding of the great trumpet of the Lord. And I've been sharing with you that there are limited verses in the Bible that speak of the coming of the Lord at the sounding of the trumpet. This concept, this motif is actually based upon, it's drawn from Isaiah 27 and verse 13. Now what you must understand, this is so critical. You must understand that Isaiah 27 is part of what is known as the little apocalypse. Isaiah 24 through 27, some say Isaiah chapter 24 to 28 or even chapter 29. I sort of kinda lend to the idea that it includes chapter 29, but it most assuredly includes chapter 28. Now, why do I say that? Because the New Testament writers, in their predictions of the consummation, the eschatological and soteriological consummation, they quote from, they cite, they allude, they echo Isaiah 24 through 28 over and over and over again. What is so significant about the time of the sounding of the trumpet is that Paul in Romans chapter 11, 25 to 27 directly quotes from Isaiah chapter 27 in his anticipation of the coming of the salvation of the remnant, the consummation of the salvation of the remnant. And it would be at the coming of the Lord when the Lord would take away Israel's sin. And by the way, in the upcoming weeks, I'm going to be examining Romans 11, 25 to 27 in refutation of Mr. Lance Conley's book, Hope Resurrected. It seems like he hangs his hat on Romans 11, 25 to 27 for his futurism. Well, there's no nail to hang a hat for futurism in Romans 11. But that's all I'll say at the moment for that. So what I've shared with you in this series of lessons and videos in regard to the sounding of the trumpet is that it is a resurrection motif. You see, Isaiah 27 is based upon these statements, in that day, that'll take us all the way back to chapter 25, Isaiah 26, 19 and following, which are predictions of the resurrection of the dead. And it would be in that day that Israel's salvation would come. Isaiah 25, verse 9 and 10. It would be in that day that the Lord would come out of the heavens, tread on tops of the mountains, and the martyrs would be vindicated. It would be in that day that Leviathan, i.e. the devil, would be slain. It would be in that day, the day of the slaying of Leviathan, in which Israel's sin would be removed. But it would be in that day, at that time, when the temple would be destroyed, the altar destroyed, the city destroyed. The people whom the Lord had created would be destroyed. This consistent theme of resurrection at the time of the judgment of Jerusalem and Judea is found throughout the entirety of the biblical text on the resurrection. So here is Isaiah 27 and verse 13. The Lord shall gather, the Lord would gather together those who are perishing in the land of Assyria and Pathros and Cush, etc., etc. That goes back to Isaiah chapter 11, by the way. And gather them with the sounding of the great trumpet. When would that be? When Jerusalem and the temple would be destroyed. Now watch this. In Matthew chapter 24, Jesus had just predicted the destruction of Jerusalem and Judea, destruction of the temple, and he spoke of it as his coming at the time when he would send forth his angels with the sounding of the great trumpet to gather the elect from the four winds. Well, that's Isaiah 27:13. Isaiah 27 would be fulfilled when Jerusalem was destroyed. Jesus is talking about the destruction of Jerusalem in Matthew chapter 24. He said it would be in his generation. And then, of course, we have 1 Corinthians chapter 15, that the resurrection would be at the sounding of the last trumpet in fulfillment of Israel's festal calendar, the time of the harvest, which is Sukkot. And it would be, that resurrection would be when the law that was the strength of the sin, which is none other than Torah, nothing other than Torah. The resurrection, number one, would be in fulfillment of Old Covenant Israel's festal calendar. Thus, resurrection, if it has not occurred, means the old law, the festal calendar, is still in effect. Israel remains God's covenant people. Old Covenant Israel remains God's covenant people. But it'd be when the law, that was the strength of sin, was removed. But folks, again, the only law that was the strength of sin was Torah. That's what Paul calls it in Romans chapter 7. And thus, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, the time of the resurrection, the time of the deliverance from the wrath that was coming. The wrath that was coming is the wrath foretold by John as Elijah, as John, as the messenger, which was imminent when John spoke, that would come from, and in Romans 5 it had not come. In 1 Thessalonians 1:10 it had not come, but it would come at the day of the Lord. And remember, John said, the axe is already at the root. The wrath is about to come. The winnowing fork is already in his hand. And then we come to Revelation chapter 11. In the book that John is told that the first, the middle, and the last, these things must shortly come to pass. The time is at hand. How ludicrous is it when scoffers try to distort and pervert God's language. And to have John simply being told, well, the time is always at hand. God is always near. No, those are not spatial terms. Those are temporal terms. And John was emphatically told that the sounding of the seventh trumpet, which is the last trumpet of 1 Corinthians 15, the sounding of the last trumpet, the seventh trumpet, for the resurrection of the dead, would be at the judgment of the city where the Lord was crucified, agreeing perfectly with Daniel's prediction that the resurrection would be when the power of the holy people was completely shattered, which is when Daniel, who had been told to go his way until the time of the end, in which he would arise to his inheritance at the end of the days. The end of what days? The 1290 days, the 1335 days, which consummated at the time when the power of the holy people was completely shattered. We thus have absolutely perfect harmony, united narrative in regard to the time and thus even the nature of the resurrection. And without variance, without difference, without contradiction, the resurrection was to be at the time of the destruction of Old Covenant Israel in AD 70. Okay, well, that gets us up through Matthew chapter 24, verses 31. Beginning tomorrow, we will begin to take a look at that, critical verses 32 and following. You don't want to miss it. I'll see you on the flip side.